Sean, it's been a newsy week, a newsy few days in the National Hockey League. We've got a lot to talk about on this podcast this week.
Thanks, Dan. We do. It has been a crazy week. We're gonna have Scott O'Neill on from the Winnipeg Jets, maybe the hottest team in hockey, although they do have some competition from Edmonton and Florida, among other teams. We're going to talk the William Nylander contract and a bunch of other stuff. But so much is going on. I guess maybe we start with the thing that's burning up the internet, right? The trade that the Philadelphia Flyers made.
That's the one. I mean, really, that's where we got to go here. The Cutter Gauthier goes from the Flyers to the Ducks. I mean, if you're listening now, you know the trade. Gauthier from the Flyers to the Ducks. The Ducks send back Jamie Drysdale and a second-round pick in the 2025 draft. And, obviously, there's so much talk about this trade because Cutter Gauthier is a guy who's never played in the league, but he's a top prospect. He was a number 5 pick in the draft in 2022. He was and by the way, congratulations to the U.S. team in the World Juniors winning, going undefeated, and Cutter Gauthier was named the best forward in the tournament, right? 12 points in that tournament. And now people are wondering, is this guy, overshooting it? Did he do too much here? Why doesn't he want to be a Flyer? What's this? Does he even have this right? Who are you? What have you ever done, right? And I don't get that part, Sean. Cutter Gauthier has the right. This is within the collective bargaining agreement. He has the right to do this. He has the right to tell the Philadelphia Flyers, I don't want to play for you, right? I mean, that's what he gets. He goes to college, and he has that right. Now, he could become a free agent after playing 4 years at Boston College, where he is right now. But now, more than likely, I would imagine he's going to sign with the Ducks. But, as this trade broke, Sean, I was at Madison Square Garden, and on the ice at the time was Adam Fox. And Adam Fox used this right twice in his time at Harvard with Calgary and with Carolina to get himself to the New York Rangers. So it's the right of Cutter Gauthier to do this. I don't begrudge him for that, but I don't like the way he handled it. I don't like the way his camp handled it. You got to meet with them face-to-face. You got to tell them face-to-face. And it doesn't sound like he did that.
First of all, you only know half the story. The young man hasn't done himself any favors. He hasn't spoken yet at all about it. But we do only know half the story, and I think there's probably some damage control going on. Why are we trading such a great asset? Although I would say that the trade is pretty fair. Drysdale's a first-round pick. They're getting a pick back. But the thing that amazes me the most is the short memories that fans have. One of the iconic players in the history of the Philadelphia Flyers told his team that drafted him, I got no interest in playing for you. And he ended up with the Philadelphia Flyers. Nobody in Philadelphia complained when Eric Lindros arrived on the scene. It was the coup of all coups, and it's what the Flyers deserve because they are the greatest team in the history of hockey. But now it goes the other way. And who is this man to say he won't come to Philly?
And I get that. I can't disagree with you there, but I also think, that Lindros situation was 3 decades ago, And there's a generation of fans here who never saw Eric Lindros play for the Philadelphia Flyers. Let's be honest, right? There is the generation of fans that are communicating, through social media. That is the generation of fans, right? They didn't see Lindros. So I get that, and you're right. It's a point well taken. It's 100% correct. And that's Flyer fans are hurt by this. I think Danny Briere's hurt by this. Keith Jones is hurt by this. The city of Philadelphia, it's proud. And they're like, why doesn't this guy want to come here? What's wrong with us? Who is this guy to say that Philadelphia is not good? If going to go to Anaheim? Really? That's a better hockey market than Philadelphia? You could be a bigger star there? I understand that point of view. My take on it, and I think what you said is 100% right. The player here is not doing himself any favors. Like I said at the top, he exercised his right here. We can't begrudge him for that. This is what he wanted, assuming this is what he wanted, and he went out and did it. All good, right? No problem there. But when Danny Briere and Keith Jones go to Gothenburg to meet with you, and they're attempting to do this, and this is what the story we know right now, right? They're attempting to meet with you. You don't have to worry about changing your mind. But what you should do is you got to go meet with them. And you just tell them, guys, I don't want to be a Flyer. Trade me. It's time. I don't want it. I'm not going to sign with you. Trade me. Do it in person, face to face. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't want to change your mind? Then don't be coerced into changing your mind. But do it in person, face to face. Danny Briere and Keith Jones, I believe, and the Flyers themselves have earned that respect. They selected you. They thought enough of you to pick you with the number 5 pick in the NHL draft. You at least can give them the respect back by going and talking to them and telling them that you don't want to be. You don't even have to give a reason. Just tell them in person. And if it's true that they went there and he wouldn't meet with them and they couldn't get him, I don't like that. And that's going to be the thing that I remember most from this trade, in my opinion.
I won't. He was there to win a gold medal. He wasn't there to talk about his future. Go some other time.
He's got an agent. The agent's not there to win a gold medal, right? There's time. But this didn't happen over the course of a couple of weeks in Gothenburg either. This has been going on for a while. If this is how he felt, he could have done this. He could spend 20 minutes with them in Gothenburg. Let's be honest. He could do that. There's no question about it. He could do that out of respect for those guys. He could do that. They flew there to see him. But either way, you got to talk to them in person in some capacity.
Yeah, at some time. But where's the respect for him? Where's the respect for the player playing in the biggest tournament of his life?
Well, I got to be honest with you. I think there is respect for the player given by the Flyers in this situation because this, like I said, this didn't go on over just the course of a couple of weeks in Gothenburg. This has been going on for a while, and this was kept pretty quiet. They did not throw the player under the bus. They did not do anything in that nature. They kept this very quiet and worked behind the scenes to make a trade happen. They didn't throw this guy under the bus.
They had to keep it quiet. This wasn't done for the player's viewpoint or the player's safety or any of that. This was done to leverage the most they could out of a deal. But if the thing you're going to remember most is that Danny Briere and Keith Jones showed up in Stockholm, in Gothenburg, and got snubbed, I don't see how that can be the thing. The kid was there to win a gold medal. That would be like him going to John Tortorella in the middle of the Stanley Cup final and saying, I want to talk about my playing time for next year.
I think he could have talked to him there. I think you could have spent a couple of minutes doing it. I think it's the right thing to do out of respect for everything. Even if you don't want to be a Flyer, that's fine. But also, another thing you brought up in this trade is fair. Jamie Drysdale might be a more important component for the Flyers as they move on here than Cutter Gauthier ever would be. If Jamie Drysdale can stay healthy, this guy's a top pair right-handed defenseman. Those guys are not easy to find. He was the number 6 pick in a draft, in the 2020 draft, right? Gauthier was the number 5 pick. Drysdale's got some NHL experience. We know a little bit about what this is going to be as a player. He's got to stay healthy, and he goes in and he fills a bigger need. And I think Danny Briere mentioned this. If you can trade for a right-handed shooting defenseman who's 21 years old and give up a left wing to do it, you're going to do it every time because of the fact that those guys are harder to find. If Gauthier was an absolute lock down the middle, I think it would be a little bit different. But as a right-handed shooting defenseman, I think Drysdale's value to the Flyers and where they are and what their needs are immediately and going forward is bigger than what Cutter Gauthier would provide them.
I think it's a fair hockey trade, and that's why I don't really understand why everybody's so indignant, right? And in the end, everybody got what they wanted. So you walk away and go watch this kid skate, Drysdale, and watch him walk the line and watch him eventually run the power play. All things that you need right now if you're the Philadelphia Flyers. You know, the power play hasn't been good. Their defense is suspect at best. Like, he's going to bring elements to Philly in the next couple of years that I think will have a bigger impact than the player would have coming as a new player and trying to find his place. And again, you can address that need in free agency much easier than you can address. Look at every team that's close trying to find a good defenseman in free agency. They don't exist, and because they don't exist, because of the scarcity, you overpay for them.
Yeah, and the Flyers had to give up a guy who's never played an NHL game to get one, who's 21 years old, who they have, they control his rights for a long time. It's a good trade for the Flyers. And they get a second-round pick. They get a second-round pick in the process as well. So I really like this trade from the Flyers, especially for a guy that didn't want to play for them. Gauthier, though, looking from the Ducks' perspective, with a team that is absolutely rebuilding. We know that. If they keep it together here, right? If they keep what they're rebuilding here together, Trevor Zegras, Mason McTavish, Leo Carlson, and Cutter Gauthier. That's your top four forwards. I mean, you're going to have to build around them, but Sean, very reminiscent to me of what they could be is what the Toronto Maple Leafs have, right? In Nylander, Marner, Matthews, and Tavares. Now, we'll talk about this, later on in this episode about the Leafs and where they go now after the Nylander contract, because this is not the NBA, right? I mean, you can't just win the Stanley Cup with 3 or 4 guys, especially 3 or 4 guys who are making more than half of the salary cap, right? So we're going to get to that. But if you want to talk skill and you want to talk scoring and you want to talk dangerous, these 4 guys, if they keep them together, that could be a real dangerous quartet right there for the Anaheim Ducks for years to come.
That's the way you look at it, is that their offense is starting to come together. And I also think, they have a young defenseman in Mintyukov, who I can never say his name right. Yeah, I'm close. Who I think made Drysdale a little more expendable. He's been really good. I would argue that he's top 5 right now. When you're looking at the Calder Trophy, that's how good to me he's been. Things are coming along a little bit on the back line. They're going to have to figure out a way to retool as they rebuild, right? Gibson's coming towards the back end of his career, so you're going to have to address something in goal, and you're going to have to do some of this on the fly. But up front, you're set not only if you want to ride that way, but also if you want to deal for volume.
Mintyukov, I think it is. I don't call you an oratory genius for nothing, Sean. So
yes,
but you're right. They traded out a position of strength to get a position that they need. So listen, there's a lot of talk, a lot of chatter about this trade, and there will continue to be. And I don't think he's worried about it, but we'll all be looking forward to the first time Cutter Gauthier goes and plays against the Philadelphia Flyers at Wells Fargo Center, because that'll be an interesting night there. There's no question about it. It won't what won't typically be the hottest ticket in town, Ducks Flyers on say a Tuesday night, will now be a hot ticket in town. All right, listen, you mentioned it at the top. Scott Arniel, the associate coach of the Winnipeg Jets, is going to be joining us shortly, and there is no hotter team in the National Hockey League right now than the Jets. A 7-game win streak, a 13-game point streak, 11-0-2, and in 30 straight games without allowing more than 3 goals. What I think is even more impressive is 10 straight games without allowing more than 2 goals and 17 of their past 18 games like that. So they're number 1 in our Super 16 this week, deservedly so. And it's funny, Sean, and I touched on this in the mailbag. Amazing how things have changed in Winnipeg, right? They look like the most unstable of the 16 teams that made the playoffs last season, coming out of the playoffs and going into the offseason. And now they might be one of the most stable teams. They look like one of the most stable teams in the league. It's amazing how the storyline has just flipped in Winnipeg.
Yeah, and congrats to Kevin Cheveldayoff, their GM. I mean, he signed Hellebuck when everybody was wondering if they were going to trade him at the deadline because they weren't going to be as good this year. They weren't going to be as competitive. Scheifele, all of those guys, and was willing to let Wheeler walk, and made the big trade with Pierre-Luc Dubois and really kind of remade this team on the fly. And I think more than talent, just stability in the room. Like, they know who they are now, they know who their leaders are, and they know what their mission is. And a lot of that goes to Bowness and Arniel when we speak to him. I think they'll speak to mission more than talent. But to me, that's the biggest difference with this team, because the team hasn't changed much. I mean, I think the other thing when you look at it, and you mention all that, a lot of this has been done without Kyle Connor, who had 17 goals in 26 games before he got hurt. A huge piece, and nobody thought that they were going to survive that. And, he's a couple of weeks out from being back to skating and doing various things, and they've gone on this huge run. So, I think it's a great story.
Kyle Connor has missed 15 games. They're 12-1-2 in those 15 games in a month. So it's been remarkable what they've been able to do. The stability is without question there. But, Sean, I think this does go back. We talk about stability. I think this goes back to those contracts for Scheifele and Hellebuck. And, signed just on the eve of the regular season. matching 8-year deals. If they didn't sign those contracts, they could still be in the position that they're in right now because those guys weren't going anywhere in the first half of the season anyway. But there would be those questions. Even if they're in this position right now, there would be questions of whether those guys were going to get traded, right? Because, I mean, how do you keep them? What do you really believe? All that stuff. So those would become distractions. But they eliminated that with those contracts. And we'll talk in a couple of years to see how those contracts are aging. We'll wait to see on that. But for right now, to me, that's where that stability started. Those guys getting that, eliminating those distractions and those questions with those contracts, they've been able to just build from there. And it wasn't the greatest start for the Jets, but they've built and built and built, and now they just look like a machine. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't turn on their game Tuesday night against Columbus until the third period. I was actually really into the Lightning Kings game, which was a great game. Tampa came back and won 3-2, but I turn on the Jets game against the Blue Jackets, and I understand it's the Blue Jackets and they're struggling, and it's 3-0 Winnipeg at this time. And I'm watching the Jets just suffocate the Blue Jackets. Nikolai Ehlers is all over the ice, dog it all over the puck. Same with Josh Morrissey. It's that type of style in a game where they're running away with it, and now by this point it's 5-0, and Nikolai Ehlers is still winning puck battles in the corner, flipping the puck up and winning the race down the ice to go get it on the forecheck. It's that type of style that they are playing that's allowed them to have this consistency. They're just dog it all over the ice, and then you listen to the broadcast, the names that they're calling out. Every one of these guys, Sean, is a solid NHL player. Maybe not a star, but a solid NHL player. There's very few, if any, guys on this roster right now that you look at and go, I don't know, is he just a fill-in guy? Should he be in the league? I don't know. I mean, they're solid across the board.
They're playing playoff hockey right now, right? When you look at that team, they're playing 3-2 games. You talked about the string of games they've had where they've let up less than 3 goals. Like, that's huge when the stakes get high. And Connor Hellebuck's had a fantastic year. You know, to me, the leading candidate for the Vezina Trophy right now. It's just been fantastic. I think they have all of the attributes you need to be really successful in the playoffs. And again, it's really that commitment, right? Ehlers has been hurt so many times, and he's healthy now, and you see what he brings to the team. I think he might be their most valuable player just for what he brings at both ends of the ice, and kind of sends a message through that team that this is the way we're going to play. These are the things that we're going to do. That I think there's a belief now from 1 to 20 that this is who we are. This is our identity, and we're comfortable playing this way. We don't have to do other things. We don't have to try and score a lot of goals. We don't have to hot dog it. We're going to grind, and we're going to muck, and we're going to be a working man's team, and that's okay with us.
That's a lot of us on the Winnipeg Jets. Let's hear from their associate coach, Scott Arniel. He joined us to talk all about the team that's the red-hot team, the hottest team in the league right now. Here's our interview with Scott Arniel. Scott, thanks so much for joining us. So it's all good right now in Winnipeg. Let's talk about these Jets. Red hot, your team. What's been fueling it in your mind right now? Sean and I were just talking about the Jets. You're right in there. What's fueling this run here?
Probably the biggest thing is the buy-in right from training camp. We had talked about last year, Vegas winning the Cup, how good they were defensively, how it's not something that you can just turn on in January or February. We really went after our team and, really talked about being real structured and being hard to play against. And really the players have bought into it tremendously. And we really haven't taken anything away from their offense. Our offensive numbers are way up there, just like our defensive numbers. And that's been the selling point, that we're not trading one off for the other. And that's where the guys have really done a fantastic job of being detailed about how we go out and play each and every night.
Is it sometimes more will than skill? And is that the lesson that you learned against Vegas?
Yeah. It really is. It's this league is about, there's great skill in this league. And the more time you allow skilled players to have the puck, to play with it, they're gonna eat you up after a while. And we just we talk a lot about, it's not just in our end of the rink. Our our coverage, our D coverage starts in the offensive zone. It's when we don't have the puck, it's through the neutral zone. it's being try to smother the opposition, try to get pucks out of the opposition's hands as fast as possible. And I think there's lots of lesson learned. You watch teams that have success in the second half of the year in the playoffs. They do a really good job of a limited amount of times you get to play with the puck.
This also seems free of distraction too. Like, and this goes back to Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuyck signing in my mind. Like, had those guys not done that, had the Jets not come to terms with those guys on these extensions, your team could still be in the same position it's in right now because they weren't getting traded at this point. But those questions would still be there. I wonder, from your perspective, do you feel that those two guys signing brought stability to this?
100%. You know what? It's such a crazy story. We were a week away from training camp, and there was nothing. I'm not saying nothing going on, but at the end of the day, we really thought our number one goaltender and our number one center were going to be playing somewhere else, whether that was midway through the season or at the end of the year. But to get that nice present in training camp, to get those two signed before, like I mentioned, the importance of having a number one center, the importance of having a elite goaltender like we have, those are big cornerstones for our hockey team, and have them locked up like they are. That really, it actually was a jolt for the rest of our team, because the rest of our team didn't know either which way it was going to go. And everybody, we were so excited coming out of training camp, and so we hit the ground running, and knowing these guys were going to be a big part of our future was a big deal to everyone.
You've been around a few good goalies during your career, during your various stops. What makes Connor unique? And do you ever remember anybody having a run quite like this, like for an extended period? Like, he hasn't had a bad game in months.
Yeah, he's he's such his demeanor and his just the way he approaches every practice, every game. He's a fisherman. He's a hunter. He's just got a really laid back attitude about things, and nothing really rattles him. Whether it's if he happens to give up a bad goal, or something happens, he doesn't matter. He just turns the page and moves on to the next one. And he's big goaltender, very athletic, does a fantastic job of reading the play, really helps our defensemen on breakouts with his retrievals. So he's been really good. I mean, we had Hank there in New York when we had a couple of runs there, and especially the first 2 years, I saw some great goaltending then. And, certainly this guy's been fantastic as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because for years Lundqvist was the heartbeat of the Rangers, and you were there and you saw it. Is that Hellebuyck now? Is he the heartbeat of this Winnipeg Jets team?
He is, but there's more to us. We're not, like I said, we're not a team that sits and relies on him making 10 bell saves every period, every game, and having to steal us hockey games. One of the biggest achievements, and this is part of our sell to our players, is that we are keeping teams under 5-on-5, under 10 scoring chances a game. And if you can do that, it frustrates the opposition, but it also, we know that when the breakdowns happen, they're not 15, 20 of those happen. There's only, like I say, under 10, and there's Helly there to save those ones. And that's what you want to do. You want to, you want to be in a position that you're not stressing him out, and he's having to, like I say, make 45 saves a night, and so that's the area for us that's really been the buy-in for our group, is that we're limiting what we're giving up, and it's not just winning hockey games because of our goalie.
How much does the look and demeanor of your team change with Nikolai Ehlers being healthy?
Huge. Every team has a few of them. They're pure goal scorers, and that's what he is. And the other side of Nick is speed. He pushes defenders back. When Kyle gets back, it's a 1-2 punch, same kind of look, same kind of goal scorer and threats. But Nick is it's been seamless since KC got hurt. He's rolled into play on that line. He's done a fantastic job, but you can see when the opposition, when he gets the puck, you can see them back pedaling, and he can burn you quick. And he's been really, really good for us. That top line's been really good for us, and we certainly needed it with Casey going out.
It seems as though, I'm glad, Sean brought Ehlers up, because he's an example of this, but it seems as though you guys are dogged all over the ice, right? And regardless of the score, and I turn on the game against Columbus and you're up 5-0 in that game, and Nick Ehlers is winning a board battle in the D zone, pushing the puck up the ice and winning the race to go get that puck. That is a mentality. When did you see that mentality really start to take shape?
Yeah, he's been pretty good all year without that way. I think that when he got bumped up to play with Scheif, and that, certainly, and with Gabe as well, that was a big shot for him. He really recognized it. But the one thing, he wants to be pushed, and he wants those examples when he doesn't do it. So he's, we bring him in, show him video, do different things with him, whether it's practice or games. He's really he's a sponge. He wants to be better, and he wants to be leaned on. He wants to be out on the ice. The last 3 or 4 minutes in games when it's tight. That's a big responsibility that he wants to take on. And like you said, his play without the puck has been just as good as with his play with the puck. I mean, his ability to, to track back, to play defense, to block shots, whatever it is, he's bought into that.
On a similar note, but obviously much younger, what's clicked for Cole Perfetti?
Yeah, he's been, there's a kid that's missed an awful lot of hockey the last 2 years. He was caught up in the pandemic, came back and had the back-to-back seasons of back surgery. So it was really just, he needed to just keep playing, learn what it takes to be a pro every day. And, he's been good for us. He recognizes that he knows what his strengths are. He knows what his weaknesses are, and he tries to make sure that he stays on top of those things. And, he's been, that line for us, with Vladdy and with Iafallo, those guys have been really, really good. They've been a great second wave for us. They've actually carried some games for us. They real good puck possession. And that's one thing with Fetz. Fetz has real good vision. He holds on to pucks, he makes plays. And actually recently he's become a goal scorer for us. So that line's been good. They've done a lot of really good things for us. And like I said, he's a young player that's kind of had to learn on the fly here a little bit just because of those injuries. And he's done a real good job of it.
This season that you guys are having is not without adversity either. I mean, obviously the injury to Kyle Connor, but the stuff that happened with Rick Bowness too, and you having to step in as well. Just take us through that. What was that like for you to have to handle that in that moment, in that time where I'm sure it's scary and it's also emotional too.
Yeah, that phone call that we got that early morning when it happened, Judy, that was hard. That was hard for all of us. And, we hadn't really got going. We had just, as a team, we hadn't started really got out and running like we have been of late. But the biggest thing that Rick has installed, we have installed as a group since we come in, is family. And it's whether it's, something happening to a family member, or, if it's a trainer, or if it's anybody, a teammate, these are all things that whether, how we stick together on the ice. But this was one of those things where, we really had to become closer. And I got to give the players an awful lot of credit. They're the ones that recognize that they didn't want to let Rick down either, that didn't want him to be worrying about us not playing well, us losing, us, not doing what we needed to do. We really wanted to relieve what stress that he was going through, him and Judy, that we did the job at the rink. And so they could sleep better. And the guys did a fantastic job of that. They really stepped up. And, for us, the coaching staff, a little bit more work, but at the end of the day, it's what we do. And, like I said, the players were a big part of that, certainly that stretch while he was away.
The whole idea of an associate coach is kind of a new thing, right? I mean, assistant coaches have grown exponentially in the last 20 years. There seems to be one for everything now. But the idea of an associate coach, so many teams have embraced that. And I'm curious, as you having lived through it, like, what is the benefit of it, and what are the challenges? Because usually the person who fills that role, like yourself, has been a coach in the league, a head coach, and so to be able to kind of step back a little bit and fill the gaps as you have, like, what are the benefits and the challenges?
Yeah, I think that some of the things that I would do maybe a little bit different is that I'll give Rick some relief when it comes to media. I'll talk a little bit more with them. I'll take some of the practices, to a little bit more of the meetings. But at the end of the day, it's still a shared responsibility. We all do our different parts. I run the defense, I run the PK, so we all have our areas that we got to do. But when it comes to on the personal side, for me, it's the next best thing to being the head guy. You get a little bit more responsibility. Certainly I didn't ever wanted to have to, go behind the bench as a head guy under the circumstances that I did, but I have had some experience as being a head coach in the past, and it helped me. There's some things that I've always wanted another shot at, and got the chance. And, so at the end of the day, just being there for Rick, being support for him, every day, not just because of what happened to Judy, but just being support for him, throwing stuff off each other all the time. That's a big part of it.
Scott, have you noticed the market really take hold of this team? We had those questions early in the season, some empty seats, what's going on? Have you felt it, that excitement within the market when you're just around?
Yeah, everybody's pretty proud right now. And the big thing, it's been pretty cool is we've been on a few trips here, a few road trips recently, and we've got some real good crowds on the road, and people obviously taking their winter breaks and getting away from here. But we just went through some warm weather and we saw a lot of fans. But at the end of the day, they're embracing it. They recognize what we're doing something special right now, and they're loud, they're boisterous, they're into it. So we'd like to keep this going. We got 3 more games of this homestand. Hopefully we can do all what we need to do before we head out on the road.
You just mentioned that you run the defense, and before I let you go, I got to ask. There's got to be some laughs in that room between Nate and Brendan and all those guys that you've kind of collected on that blue line. I don't imagine it's a very tight room.
Yeah, no, our D union there, we talk about it often, but the one thing about these guys that they've really bought in. It's a hard thing to do when new coaching staff come in, but right from the get-go last year, they've bought into our style of play, how we want to play. We challenged them all about, being more offensive, with still being good defensively. And I think we're number 4 in the league, 5-on-5 points. So those are things that those guys have bought in. We got some great people, though. We have some really good people in our room, and those defensemen, those guys, they like to make sure that they're, especially Dilly and Nate, are a big part of a lot of the fun that happens.
Last one for me, just as we look ahead here, right? I mean, this has been a great run. You guys are at the top of the league now. The next challenge, I guess, is to stay there, which is not the easiest thing to do. So just from your perspective, what gives you the idea or the knowledge or the belief that this team is ready for that next challenge?
Well, I think the biggest reminder for us is where we were last year at this time, which we weren't first overall, but we were top of the division. We were right there with the Colorados and with the Dallases, and the second half didn't go so good, after the break. And it doesn't take long for us just to, put that back into our players' minds that this next stretch of 40 games is the hardest ones. All these sort of the young teams or maybe the early teams that got off to great starts are starting to slide out of the picture, and the top teams are starting to move forward. Every game's going to get even tougher, especially within our division. So, like I said, the reminder last year certainly helps, but I do think we're a group that learned from it. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, our play without the puck has been a big reason why we've had success. It's not like we're at this time in the year where we're the highest scoring team offensively and we're not real good defensively. I really like the fact that we've got both of our things in order, and that's with and without the puck. And we think we have the sort of the remedy to kind of move that into the second half of the year.
Well, great, Scott. Thanks for joining us. I know it's a busy time for you. We're getting closer to All-Star break, and you get a little break, and then it's a sprint to the finish line. So we really appreciate you joining us and sharing a little bit about what's been the Jets' success, and good luck in the second half.
All right, guys. Great talking to you.
Good stuff there with Scott Arniel, the Jets' associate coach. They are red hot, Sean. 7-game winning streak, 13-game point streak. Number 1 in our Super 16 this week. All right, a couple other things. We'll stay in Canada. William Nylander, big news, obviously. Monday, William Nylander signs the 8-year deal, $92 million, $11.5 million per. He's the leading vote getter right now, Sean, in the All-Star fan vote, which ends midnight Thursday, continues on. Today's Wednesday, so it continues on a little bit, and I think it's a no-brainer that William Nylander will be, well, he's in Toronto now, but will be in Toronto for All-Star weekend. He's a leading vote getter. He absolutely belongs. He's tied for 3rd in the league in scoring right now, 57 points, same as David Pastrnak, same as Artemi Panarin. What'd you think, Sean, when you saw the contract for Nylander?
I thought he was underpaid. I thought the Maple Leafs got a deal, and it is a hometown discount, and I can see the allure of staying with that core, right? Nylander and Matthews, and kind of going along and hoping you're the duo that ends the misery in Toronto, right? And you're making a fair wage, but I think if he waits, there's a bigger number on the table, especially with the season he's having. So that's my first thought, and then my second thought is, wow. are the Toronto Maple Leafs hamstrung.
Mm-hmm.
They have 4 really good players, and they don't have enough to compete.
Yes. That's what I thought too. First off, William Nylander deserves this contract. He's earned the contract. I agree with you, Sean. He probably could have gotten in the 12s if he hit the open market on July 1st, if not more, with the season he's having. No question about him. This guy could have 120 points this season, right? And he's flashy. He's a face of a franchise type of guy. Looks like nothing in the world ever bothers William Nylander the way he is. Just, what it must be like to be William Nylander, right? But he wanted to stay in Toronto. He wants to win with that team. And he signed that contract. And the Leafs put themselves in an absolute position where they had to sign him. They had to do it because you can't let him walk for nothing in the offseason. That would look terrible, right? They're not trading him. They want to go win the Stanley Cup this season. They're not trading him. So they put themselves in the position to do it, and I think they got a deal. I do. I mean, 8 years, $92 million, it's hard to say they got a deal, but Nylander left some money on the table. I agree with you on that. But this is a team without a goalie. This is a team with very little on the back end. They don't have many prospects, and they don't have many draft picks. They have 4 really good players, and they have some depth guys, and a really good defenseman in Morgan Riley, who you could argue is maybe not a number 1 on a Stanley Cup winning team. Maybe a number 2 on a Stanley Cup winning team. He's number 1 without question there. But they don't have what it takes to win the Stanley Cup this year or next year, if you look at it. They have 4 really good forwards who are taking up next season $46.6 million on an $87.7 million cap. 4 guys. John Tavares will come off of that after next season. Whether he re-signs in Toronto to finish his career there or leaves, his number won't be at $11 million, which is what it is now, but it will be through next season. But then you have to pay Mitch Marner if you're going to keep this thing going with these guys, right? Then you got to pay Mitch Marner. And his number, which is 10-9 right now, is going to go up. So what you lose in Tavares, you pick up in Marner, right? It just keeps going and going like that. But they have so many other needs. So I certainly think they had no choice in the situation right now to where they are to pay Nylander to do this contract, and I like the deal. I would have traded him in the offseason. I would have put myself in a position where I didn't have to do this deal during the regular season. I would have traded William Nylander or Mitch Marner, one of the two, in the offseason, broken up that quartet, and gotten pieces that we need to win the Stanley Cup. Because right now they don't have enough, like you said, to do it. And their goaltending is in shambles, which is, we know, the most important position there is.
They're the East Coast version of the Edmonton Oilers.
Who look great, by the way, right now.
That's what they are. Yeah, they look great right now. What have they done in the playoffs? Because they're not built for the playoffs. They have 4 good forwards. They get matched out of games. They get line matched out of games by really good teams that are deep up the middle. And their goaltending gets exploited and their defense gets exploited. What's going to happen to the Toronto Maple Leafs when they play the Boston Bruins or the Florida Panthers? How are they going to compete?
It's a great question. I mean, last year they go and they beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, with similar to what they have now. But the Tampa Bay Lightning were not the championship Tampa Bay Lightning. And look, Toronto got them, right? They beat them. And they go play Florida, and they got run out, basically, right? Against the Florida Panthers. The Panthers, who've won 8 in a row, by the way, are deep, big, physical, grind you down, skilled, can score. Their best forwards are also their best 200-foot players, right? I mean, there's all that. Boston has that culture, and it's the same way. Toronto doesn't have it. They're going to have to prove a lot of people wrong. But what do you think? I mean, do you think they should have traded Nylander or Marner in the offseason?
I think at some point you have to break up this cycle, right? But to me, like you mentioned all that stuff about the teams they're going to play, what those 2 teams have are Vezina-level goalies.
Yes, they do.
And that's the difference. Right now, here's Toronto's options in the playoffs. Samsonov, who they sent away from the team. They didn't even send him down to Toronto. They just called him back up, but they sent him away for a week to try and get his head right. Joseph Wall and Martin Jones. How do you feel about that? if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan going into the playoffs. Again, think about the East. Swayman, Ullman, Bobrovsky, Shesterkin. It doesn't end. Like, there's almost no team that you can play in the East where you're going to win the goaltending battle.
But beyond that, Sean, their defense doesn't match up with any of the defenses either that, the teams around them. They just don't match up. They're not that way. I've wondered for a while, and I've wondered certainly throughout this season, what's the identity of the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? They're super skilled. They have 4 guys that absolutely can win games for you on a nightly basis in the regular season. They are super skilled. Austin Matthews is out of this world good. And that's how they stay in it, and that's how they win and all that stuff. But what is their identity? And I ask you that question not knowing the answer. I don't have an answer for it.
They're a show. They're like the Edmonton Oilers. They're the team you want to come in and you want to see because they're going to put on a show. And it's going to be a 5-4 show one way or another. And there's going to be 3 unbelievable goals each way because nobody's playing defense. And you walk away really happy. And then you forget about it. And then when the playoffs come, the show stops.
Yeah.
There are no more shows. Maybe there's one, like I think about Edmonton last year. They had a show in Vegas. And then Bruce Cassidy was like, I don't ever, ever, ever want to see that again. That made me sick to my stomach. And Edmonton was out.
6 games. Yeah. The contract to me made sense, given the situation right now. But they have a lot to prove. But, listen, we talked Toronto. We talked Winnipeg. Let's talk Vancouver. We'll keep it up in Canada. And it really, it brings up a question of who's the best team in Canada, or which Canadian team has the best chance to end this awful cycle for Canadian teams of not winning the Stanley Cup since the Canadiens in 1993. We talked the Winnipeg Jets. I think if you're listening, you hear us saying it's not the Toronto Maple Leafs. Sean, I think it's the Vancouver Canucks. I think I am so impressed with the Vancouver Canucks. First off, Quinn Hughes is just terrific, okay? And it's not just because he generates the offense. Quinn Hughes is a breakout machine. He's a one-man breakout at times. They move the puck through the neutral zone so fast. His precision getting it through the neutral zone is exceptional. His ability to break a forecheck by making a quick move is among the best in the league. So he's my Norris Trophy guy right now, and he belongs in the All-Star game. But they have 4 or 5 other guys that could be in the All-Star game too. Elias Pettersson, terrific 200-foot forwards, just terrific skill. JT Miller has really found his game as a scoring power forward. Brock Besser is a goal scorer, pure goal scorer, having that type of year. Thatcher Demko, if it's not Hellebuck, it's Demko as the Vezina Trophy guy right now. They started to build what they were. They started to build what they are in the second half of last year after Rick Tocchet took over. It really took off when Thatcher Demko came back. But the games, and we've talked about this, there was no pressure. The games didn't really mean anything at the time. They've carried it on. Their speed, their transition, their skill, and just their overall play, all over the ice. I've just been so impressed having seen them now up close, right? Up close, and they rolled through here, our area in the metropolitan area, beat the Devils, beat the Rangers, beat the Islanders, didn't have much trouble doing any of it. To me, they're the best team in Canada, even though the Jets are playing the best maybe, and they have the best chance of the Canadian teams to win the Stanley Cup next.
Well, I still think it's Winnipeg. I don't know that they're a better team than Vancouver. Look, almost nobody comes through New York and wins 3 games in a row. Because you play 3 games in 4 nights, and the Devils and the Rangers are pretty good, and the Islanders are, a mediocre team that's struggling a little bit. But you're right, none of it was close, and they ran the Rangers out of the building, and the Rangers are considered one of the class teams in the East, right? Top 2-3 teams in the East, and they toyed with them. I didn't think that game was close at any point. So I think Vancouver has the most talent. I really like Thatcher Demko a lot, but I think Winnipeg has that mindset, right, where they're going to just lock you down in the playoffs, and just suffocate you to no end. And now they have a game breaker or two, right, in Scheifele and Connor. They have those players that when it's a 1-1 game in the third period, they're not hanging on for dear life. They can go and win the game 2-1, 3-2. So I think that Winnipeg might be a little better as a team. I think Vancouver's the more talented team, but talent doesn't always win in the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I mean, listen, what a great Western Conference final that would be, but let's not disregard the fact that the Vegas Golden Knights will have a say. The Colorado Avalanche are going to have a say in this. The Edmonton Oilers might have a say in this. If the LA Kings can get it figured out again, they'll have a say in this. I think I said it last week, Sean, the West is just way better than I thought it was going to be. You know, like the East is maybe deeper. You look at the Metropolitan Division, there's 7 teams that can make the playoffs. They all won't, but there's 7 that could. You look at the Atlantic, you know, Detroit's dropped off. Ottawa hasn't been what we thought they could be, neither is Buffalo. Montreal maybe is a little bit better than we thought they would be, but they're not really a threat. But there's 11, 12 maybe teams in the East. It's not maybe not that heavy in the West, but the teams that are there in the West, they're loaded. Any single one of those teams, from Vegas to Colorado to Winnipeg to Vancouver, LA, maybe Edmonton, can win the Stanley Cup this year.
All I know is if it's a Vancouver Winnipeg Western Conference final, everybody in our office is going to, except for me, is going to fight to go to the East.
I don't know.
Nightmare travel scenario.
It is.
Time zones, distance. Like, and sometimes you think about that in the playoffs, and it doesn't really enter into your head. But, like, when you think about what Florida did last year, they never left the Eastern Seaboard. They barely traveled. And then you think about what Vegas did and how much that disparity is and how different it would be for an Eastern Conference final that would require probably no more than 600 miles of travel at the worst, to Vancouver and Winnipeg just beating the snot out of each other for 7 games across the continent, and then have to go play in a Stanley Cup final. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think we know the teams that it's not. It's not Toronto. It's not Ottawa. You know, and let the
not
rest
Montreal
of them,
yet.
Yeah, it's not Montreal, and let the rest of them sort it out.
Yeah. No, it'll be interesting to see. It's a good debate. It's always a healthy debate in Canada, right? There's never any, you know, dismissive arguments from, you know, Vancouver to Toronto about who's the better team, right? Never happens.
No, but just in sheer volume, Toronto's the best team in Canada. So.
A couple other things before we get out of here. Okay, mailbag. Listen, I touched on the Canucks and I touched on the Jets in my weekly mailbag, which is up on NHL.com. But got a question, trade deadline related. The Rangers and Capitals, I answered questions on both of them. They play each other back-to-back, a home-and-home afternoon game, Saturday and Sunday this weekend coming up. For the Rangers, the question was, are they going to make a trade? If so, when? For the Caps, are they buyers or are they going to be sellers? Now, the trade deadline, we're still 2 months away, a little less than 2 months. It's March 8th is the trade deadline. So there's a lot of runway there still, but these questions start coming up. The debates start talking right now. And it's easy for the Rangers. They have to figure out the Filip Chytil situation. Filip Chytil is a center for them. He's been out since November 2nd with an upper body injury. He's back in the Czech Republic right now as a reset in his recovery. If he's not going to be able to play again in the regular season, it opens up the checkbook a little bit for the Rangers to maybe go out and do something. But if he does, if they believe he's going to be able to come back, they're not going to have much cap space to do anything. But the Caps are more interesting, Sean, because they're right in the thick of the race in the Metropolitan Division. They have Ovechkin. It's nearing the end of the run here for Ovechkin, but he's still signed. And you don't want to waste these last years, right, of Alex Ovechkin. That's not why he re-signed. You don't want to waste those years. They have the long-term injured reserve money available to them from putting Nicholas Backstrom on LTIR. Are they good enough? Are they going to be good enough to be a team that is going to be a buyer at the deadline? And I don't mean a buyer in the sense of buying just a pure rental who's absolutely not re-signing with them. I think that they would want to go out and get somebody who really has a legit chance of re-signing with them. But are they going to do that? Or can they hang around long enough? to do that. I think it's going to be a real toggle here for their management, for Brian McClellan and their management of what they do here. Because are they good enough? I don't know that they are. And they got to be in the race to do it. They could fall out. But if they're in the race, do you do it?
Yeah, I think if you're top 8 and you get close to the deadline, I don't say you load up, but you try and make your team better. And the Florida Panthers showed you what happens, right? If you hit it at the right time, you get good goaltending, and you catch a favored team a little unawares, and then you're off to the races, and then it's an 18 battle, and everything kind of gets reset. So I think if you're in the race, you owe that to your veteran core, to Tom Wilson now and Carlson and Ovechkin and those guys, and you do go for it without mortgage in the future. Look, that Hershey team in the AHL, there's some vets on that team, but there's been a lot of young kids on that team, and they're the best team in the AHL again, and they won the championship last year. So, unlike we just talked about with Toronto, I think there is a bit of a pipeline there. There are still players that can come up. They have some young players on very favorable contracts, and they kind of are resetting as they go along. So I think if I'm their GM, I'm certainly entertaining that. If I'm in 8-9, with 3 weeks left before the trade deadline, I start having those conversations and seeing what I can get there. By the way, just as a piece of housekeeping, the game this weekend, I think it's the Saturday game. It's the first ABC game of the year. So we're getting to that point of the season where, here in the States, the games start being on big national TV, right? A lot of games on ESPN and everything, but hockey's getting important when the games start showing up on broadcast TV. So, and this is the first one, and it's a good show for the first one. I think the Capitals, especially with the way the Rangers are playing, I think the Capitals could give them trouble.
Oh, they'll absolutely give them trouble. No question about it. The Rangers need to get their defensive game figured out. It's been a bit of a struggle for them, but again, it's ebbs and flows, right? How it goes. But yeah, home and home for the Capitals and Rangers, and in very important games, particularly for the Washington Capitals as they try to stay in this race. And I think we could have the same topic of conversation when it comes to the Pittsburgh Penguins too. And what do they do? What does Kyle Dubas do? Right? I mean, they're in that conversation as well. 2 pieces of housekeeping, Sean, before we get out of here. Connor Bedard, 6 to 8 weeks out, surgery on his fractured jaw. That's a bummer. That is just a flat-out bummer. I really was hoping that he would be in the All-Star weekend, in the skills competition, showcasing who he is, and it doesn't look like that is going to happen right now. I had no problem with the hit from Brendan Smith. He didn't step up on him. Bedard's low. I know some people in Chicago thought it was dirty. I didn't think at all. I like Luke Richardson's reaction to it. Not a dirty hit. Just an unfortunate situation there.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. And we have an interesting piece that went up on the site yesterday from Paul McLean as we get back into a little bit of the coach's corner. He talked about young players having to learn how to protect themselves in this league, right? It's a different league. You can't be reaching for pucks at the attacking blue line. There are still predatory players in this league, and not in a bad way, but players that are looking to be physical and to stop you from coming into the zone with speed. And to me, that's what Brendan Smith did. He moved into his path, right? Completely legal. Yep. Hit him in the chest, and there was some collateral there, and it's completely unfortunate that happened. I'm still holding out hope that Connor Bedard will be at All-Star game and maybe not in a capacity that we hoped he would be, but to showcase who he is a little bit in such a huge market. So we'll see what happens there, but it is, I mean, for anybody that enjoys watching unbelievable talent, it's 6 weeks without it. But it's, you know what? It's just like Connor McDavid when he came into the league.
It is exactly that.
He's going to miss almost exactly the same amount. And Connor McDavid talked about it last night. They played Chicago, and he felt bad, but it's something that you can overcome. And to me, the interesting thing now is the Calder race, right? Does he miss enough that he's not the Calder guy? He's the clear-cut guy right now. You could try and make it a race all you want, But in these next 6 weeks, I think there's a crop of rookies that can step up and make a case, right? Fantilli's finally starting to figure it out. Nobody talks about Brock Faber in Minnesota. He is playing crazy minutes for that team. He's playing more minutes as a rookie than Hedman played as a rookie, than Doughty played as a rookie, than any of these players played as a rookie, and nobody mentions them. And I just think there are guys, I don't think defensemen ever get the credit they deserve, especially as rookies, because it's so hard. I think there are guys that can challenge Connor Bedard now that he's going to miss 6 weeks at the minimum.
Well, Brock Faber's number 2 on my Calder list right now, behind Bedard. So I guess if Bedard's going to be out, he's number 1. Listen, this was a lot of fun. One last thing. I said 2 pieces of housekeeping, so one last thing. Connor Ingram, great story for the Arizona Coyotes. Better story by Amelie Benjamin. Go read that story on NHL.com. If you're going to read anything today, tomorrow, whatever, read Amelie's story on Connor Ingram and everything this guy has gone through to get back into the NHL and to be an NHL goaltender and really just live his life. So read that story, enjoy that story, and enjoy the hockey.